For thousands of years, immersing in a mikveh was essential to the laws of family purity. This mitzvah is one of the fundamental doctrines of Jewish faith and family purity. For thousands of years, Jewish couples who have committed themselves to this ancient law have felt that their marriage was strengthened and enhanced through this holy observance. The mitzvah of mikveh is the core of the Jewish family. It's what maintains the foundation of the Jewish people. In those waters, a woman is able to experience a renewal, a very unique moment of special closeness to God, where she could pray for herself, for her husband and family, and for all of Am Yisrael. When a woman immerses in the mikveh, she's connecting herself to the source of life, to the world of purity and kedusha. She's connecting herself to God in a spiritual way that transcends her physicality. And this precious mitzvah of upholding the purity of the Jewish family is entrusted to the woman. Every woman should feel singular and distinct. This is your mitzvah, and God chose you to be the one to bear the torch of kedusha that you pass on through those waters and to the generations that follow. Because so many women, unfortunately, do not understand the importance of this mitzvah, because they don't have the proper knowledge that would enable them to maintain and uphold it, many Jewish women neglect it. For this reason, we have decided to put together this series in the merit of the young couple, Miriam and Ari, who are getting married. We hope and pray that women who take the time to learn about this precious mitzvah and they take it upon themselves to visit the waters of the mikveh will not only merit to enhance their life and their marriage, but let it stand as a zechut for this young couple, that they should experience happiness, togetherness, and that they should be protected. Let it be a zechut for this young couple that they live with shalom bayit and merit to see generations upon generations of children whom they brought into the world through this beautiful mitzvah, and that they witness miracles, blessings, and yeshuot in their life.
We hope this series will also stand as a merit to all of the singles in Am Yisrael who are searching for their zivug. May they be zeicha to fulfill the mitzvah of mikveh speedily.
Welcome, ladies, to part 5 of the mikveh series titled The Rivers of Gan Eden. We're going to take a deeper look into the subject of mikveh as it corresponds to the rivers of Gan Eden. In Parashat Bereshit, the Psukim describe how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man and then placed him in Gan Eden. Gan Eden represented the perfected state of man. So let's read the Psukim and then analyze them. Vayita Hashem Elokim gan be'eden mikedem, and Hashem planted a garden in Eden from the east. Vayasem sham et ha'adam asher yatzar, and he placed there the man whom he had formed. Vayatzmach Hashem Elokim min ha'adama kol etz nechmad lemar'eh v'tov lema'achal, and Hashem caused to sprout from the ground every tree that is pleasant to see and good to eat. Ve'etz ha'chaim betoch hagan, ve'etz hadat tov v'ra, and the tree of life was in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Ve'nahar yotze me'eden lehashkot et hagan, and a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden. Umisham yipared v'haya le'arba rashim, and from there that river separated and became 4 heads, or in modern days we would call it 4 tributaries. Shem ha'echad Pishon. The name of one tributary was called Pishon. Hu hasovev et kol eretz hachavila asher sham hazahav. That's the one that encompasses all the land of Chavila, where there is a lot of gold. Uzehav ha'aretz hahi tov. And the gold of that land is good. Sham habedolach ve'even hashoham. There is the crystal and the onyx stone. V'shem hana'ar hasheni Gihon. And the name of the second tributary of the river is Gihon. Hu hasovev et kol eretz Kush. That's the river that encompasses all the land of Kush, which in modern times would be Ethiopia. V'shem hanahar hashlishi Chidekel. And the name of the third river is Chidekel, which today is known as the Tigris. Hu haolech kidmat Ashur. That's the one that flows to the east of Assyria. V'hana'ar harevi'i hu Perat. And the fourth river is known as Prat. Today, it's the Euphrates River. Vayitach Hashem Elokim et ha'adam. And Hashem took the man. Vayanichehu ben Gan Eden le'avda u'leshama. And God placed him in Gan Eden to work it and to guard it. Vayetzav Hashem Elokim el ha'adam lemor. And then God commanded man, saying, Mikol etz hagan achol tochal. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. Ume'etz hadat tovara lo tochal mimenu. But of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. Ki beyom achalcha mimenu mot tamut. For on the day that you eat that from that tree thereof you shall surely die. At the end of these psukim, Adam is given one commandment, and that was not to eat from the Etz Hadat. So what happened? The Nachash, the snake, tempted Chava, and the end result was that Adam and Chava ate from the forbidden tree. What was the consequence of that transgression? Adam and Chava were banished from the utopian life of Gan Eden, and they were forced to live in the outside world, which represents the imperfect state of man today. There is, however, one puzzling element to this picture as we read these psukim. If you notice, smack in the middle of the story of Adam and Chava, the Torah suddenly introduces us to the river that came forth from Gan Eden, together with a detailed description of that river and all its tributaries. The Torah seems to interrupt the story of Adam and Chava and their beginning, for no apparent reason, to do what? To talk about the river and its tributaries. And what's even more puzzling is that after the river is mentioned here, the river is never mentioned again. In addition to that, the story of what took place in Gan Eden is meant to teach us a lesson about man and his yetzer, his inclination. So in this context, the description of the rivers seemed to be a little bit out of place. Therefore, in order to connect everything we've learned up until now and to explain this river that pops up out of nowhere, we have to first comprehend the concept of man's perfection, the concept of evil, and the idea of Adam Harishon's sin. Now, there's a basic question that most people ponder about at some point in their lives, and that question is, why did God create this world? Now, to a large extent, this question can be answered fully and completely. As human beings, we cannot fathom, nor can we understand God's reasoning. But we can attempt to understand somewhat based on what our rabbis reveal to us. And most Chachamim state that God created the world as an act of chesed, in order to do good for mankind. He placed man in this world in order that man be the recipient of that good. But what's the greatest possible good that God can provide for man? That answer was written in a sefer called Derech Hashem, which was authored by the Ramchal, alav shalom, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. And he writes that the greatest possible good is Hashem himself. Therefore, the good that God wanted for man to possess was the ability to resemble him and to be closer to him. And in order for that to be possible, man had to be created with absolute free will. If not, man would have been nothing more than a mere puppet. Free will provides us with the ability to be the product of God because we were created B'Tselem Elokim, in His image. Therefore, just as God acts as a free agent, as a free being, so does man. Just as God acts without restraints, so does man. Hareshut lechol adam netuna, says the Rambam. Every man has free will. And just as God can do good from his own free will, so can a human being. But if that's the case, the man has to be given the freedom to choose from that place of ratzon, from his own free will. After all, think about it. A man that's locked up in prison has the same free will as anybody else out there. But there's very little that he could do with that free will if he's locked up. So in order for man to resemble God, kiviyachol, to the greatest possible degree that we could resemble him, man had to be given freedom of choice. We had to be given bechira chofshit. Therefore, according to the Gemara, in order to make this freedom of choice real, God had to create the possibility of evil in the world. Why? Because if the only thing available to man was the possibility of good, then there would be no freedom of choice, and choosing good wouldn't be such a big deal, and we wouldn't be able to benefit the rewards from the choosing itself. It's no big deal if only good is in front of you, and that's all you have left to choose from. Freedom of choice ultimately creates a situation where a person has the ability to change positively as a result of that very choice, if that choice is a proper choice. But what happened? The evil that Hashem had to create, that was not an integral part of man. Adam HaRishon had no desire or impulse to do evil. He was living in harmony in his environment and with his spiritual self. There was no conflict, there was no frustration, there was no compulsion or even a lack of self-control. Adam had the ability to create the perfect society. That was the state of Adam in Gan Eden. He lived an ideal life with no worries. His mind was free to engage in spiritual matters. He had no need for clothing. He had no need for shelter. Evil was not part of man. It was an outside force that he could easily avoid. It was over there by the trees, so to speak. As a matter of fact, the Nefesh HaChaim, alav shalom, teaches us that the Nachash in Gan Eden, it was not a part of man's makeup. The Nachash existed as an external part of man. Adam had the ability to debate with this external force, to debate with it or to ignore it like any other outside element. Because evil urges and desires, they were not part of man like they are today. But now, we can't easily escape those desires no matter where we go. So man was given one mitzvah, not to eat from the Etz Hadat. And in this tree, there existed an intermingling of good and evil that could not be separated. That's why the tree was called the Etz Hadat Tov Vara. Both were intermingled in this one tree and inseparable. Once Adam ate from the tree, the same became true of him. At that moment, the evil was mixed with the good, and it became an intrinsic part of man's being. Now the human being had a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Hatov. Man now contained within him an evil inclination that was part of his psyche, and no matter what he would do, he could not escape it. Just like the Etz Hadat, man was now a mixture of good and evil, and he would have to spend all his days battling this evil while at the same time attempting to overcome it. Therefore, as a result, man's essence became filled with contradictions, with conflict, with doubts, with hesitation. The result of this is that it made it impossible to create a perfect society. When Adam sinned, he lost the opportunity to gain immortality. That's why God warned him, saying, "On the day you eat from this tree, you will surely die." In addition to that, since the world, we said, was created for the sake of man, when Adam sinned, he brought the entire world down with him. The evil was no longer concentrated in one nachash, in one snake. Rather, the evil was now dispersed throughout all of creation. The Etz Hadat had a mixture of good and evil, and now man would struggle to discern one from the other. The Gemara says that only the Torah HaKadosha gave man the ability to overcome the evil within himself. It gave him the ability to avoid it. It gives us the ability to overcome it. It gives us the ability to elevate ourselves to a higher level of goodness. And that's a very important point that you should remember. Because one of the ways that we're able to attain the good and to rise to perfection is through the Torah. The Gemara of Kiddushin says that Hashem himself said, "Barati Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tavlin," which means Hashem said, I created the Yetzer Hara, but I created the Torah as its remedy. So now the question is, what does this all have to do with mikveh, with the rivers in Gan Eden, with anything that we've been discussing? Patience, ladies, patience. Let's continue. So ultimately, all the tumah and zuhama that penetrated this world was due to the sin of Adam Harishon. If man would not have sinned, he would have remained in his elevated state in Gan Eden, and nothing would have caused him to be spiritually unclean. So how does man purify himself and remove himself from the state of what we would call spiritual soil? How does he disassociate himself from his fallen state and reassociate himself with Gan Eden? Chachamim tell us that purification is primarily through water, through the immersion in a mikveh. And water is the primary connection that we have to Gan Eden. The Gemara tells us that all the waters in the world ultimately have their roots in that one river that emerged from Gan Eden. Can you imagine? Therefore, that river from Gan Eden, in a sense, is the spiritual source of all the water in the world. So even though a person cannot re-enter Gan Eden itself, but whenever he associates himself with this river or any one of its tributaries, he's re-establishing his link with Gan Eden. And fascinatingly, the Midrash informs us that when Adam Harishon was banished from Gan Eden, you know what he did? He repented by sitting near this river. And that shows us that although he was barred from entering Gan Eden, he attempted to maintain a link through that river. Therefore, when a person immerses himself in a mikveh, he's reestablishing a link with man's perfected state in Gan Eden. And when he does that, he loses the status of Tumah and he's reborn in a state of Tahara, so to speak. That's the reason why the mikveh has to be linked to natural waters. The waters that enter a mikveh must come from a natural state. They can't pass through anything that's capable of being defiled, because we want the connection to that river to be pure and untouched. In addition, and with this I will end, our Chachamim teach that the word mikveh has the same letters as the word koma, which literally means rising, leitkomem. It is through the mikveh that a person can rise from his fallen state and he can link himself to the perfected state of Gan Eden. So let's go back to our original question. Why was the story of Adam HaRishon interrupted with a description of that river that ran through Gan Eden? The Torah informs us that Hashem planted a garden, and in it he placed the Etz Hadat. With this tree, God also created the possibility that man could sin and eventually be banished from Gan Eden. Therefore, even before God placed Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, he established a link between the Gan and the world outside the Gan. And that, ladies, was the river that emerged from the garden and spread forth to the other bodies of water that were located outside the Garden of Eden. So the interruption of the story of Adam with the mentioning of the river, it's not stam over there. It's not for naught. It's quite an important statement regarding man's condition in the world outside Gan Eden. Because even though we've been expelled from Gan Eden, the link still remains. And it's through the waters of the mikveh that we can associate ourselves with the purity of Gan Eden all over again. And who's the privileged character who receives a chiyuv, an obligation to immerse in these waters? All of Chava's descendants. Ladies, you don't immerse yourselves in the mikveh just to be able to be with your husbands. There are many hidden and spiritual things taking place during your counting process, the counting of the days, during your hachanot, during all your preparations, during the immersion itself, and after that too. But the basics of what we learned so far is that by immersing in the waters of the mikveh, dafka there in those waters, you're going back to the exalted state of the world prior to the creation, where everything was pure and everything was unaffected. You are changing your status from less elevated to tehora. You're reborn again and being resurrected into a state of newness and aliveness. You're reconnecting with the days of the utopian life in Gan Eden each time your body and the water make contact. You're drawing down the forces of Kedusha of those waters, and your body absorbs the Kedusha that you then pass on to your husband that evening. And then you're allowing your womb to be the pure vessel by which a pure soul can descend into this world.
Boi b'shalom, boi